Let me ask you this: when we're
talking murder. Here.
Yeah, so, no, I mean, listen, this is weird stuff,
and that's still going on.
Right,
that is still happening today, right now, as we speak.
The level of technology. Okay, some of the stuff that we got, 0-point energy, teleporting, like the concept of teleporting. Is that something that's out of the ordinary? Is that currently? Do we have access to it? How long have we had it? Who invented it? Is it being used? What's the worry with that? Why are they not releasing it if they have access? There's a lot of questions with it, obviously.
Well, all of it. I mean, they don't release it. They don't want anyone to know about it. But if you look at the testimony of one of our witnesses, Fred Threadfeld, 1953, he was at a Canadian Air Force base, and they were experimenting with that so-called teleportation. And he said it was so funny. They were using, everyone smoked back then, these big ashtrays, and it would be, an electromagnetic system here, and at the other end of the base, another one. And this ashtray would go, boom, teleport. Now, Einstein, when he said the same particle could be in two places at once, he called it the spooky effect. But really what it is what's called quantum entanglement, where every point in space and time is connected to the other. And if you look up quantum entanglement, that's what this is. But imagine doing that not just with a particle, but with a whole object or a spacecraft. So those experiments were going on also, 30s, 40s, 50s. But when they began to unpack and really have some of the most brilliant minds, I mean, I will tell you, the smartest people I've ever met, with certainly IQs north of mine, have been working on these projects in underground.
So you're convinced teleportation is a real thing?
Oh, it certainly can be done.
When you're reading it, it says teleportation is the theoretical transfer of matter or energy from one point to another without traversing the physical space between them. It is a common subject in science fiction, fantasy, literature, film, video games, and television. In some situations, teleporting is presented as time traveling across space. The use of matter transmitters in science fiction originated at least as early as 19th century. An early example of scientific teleportation is found in an 1897 novel, To Venus in 5 Seconds by Fred Jane. Jane's protagonist is transported from a strange machinery containing gazebo on Earth to planet Venus. A common fictional device for teleportation is a wormhole. In video games, the instant teleportation of a player character may be referred to as a warp. So if that exists...
Well, it does. I mean, how are you going to go from one star system to another? Just bear me with me a minute. If you're in 1% of the way through our galaxy, the Milky Way, is 1,000 light years, which at the speed of light, which you can't go, because as you accelerate the speed of light, you become infinitely massive. So it would be 1,000 years one way, 1,000 years another. So in order to traverse interstellar space, and this was concluded early on by the fact they were here, and we downed some of them, you have to do basically your bending space-time. So visualize this, like a piece of paper. I don't have one, but you have a star system here and we're here. Instead of going in a straight line, even at enormous velocities, like our space shuttle and what have you, through these very high voltage electromagnetic systems that also create gravitational waves, you can bend space-time. So the piece of paper does this. So the 2 points come right here. So you're actually, that's where you get into this whole non-locality in physics and quantum entanglement in an applied setting. So the fact that it's relegated to science fiction is fine. It doesn't mean that it isn't being done, because it has to be. You're not going to be able to travel through interstellar distances in any way during any species lifespan without obliterating, as it were, linear space-time. And it doesn't mean you're not traversing, but you're moving trans-dimensionally. So let's look at it from the point of view of it's like a quantum hologram. A hologram where, like, if you had a hologram of Marilyn Monroe with her skirt, if you zoomed in on one little part of it, it would have the entirety of her image in it, and then zoom in again and zoom in. So when you're talking about a quantum sort of holographic view of the universe, which is a correct one, then you're not traveling in a straight line. And you're using, however, a whole new area of physics. And this is not going to be in your physics textbook or at MIT. It's in these classified areas. And that's why I tell people, I'd say some of the very smartest physicists and electromagnetic engineers I've ever met work in these projects, and they're in, usually most of the time, they're in a deep underground military base.
I want to read this. In 1993, Bennett proposed that a quantum state of particle could be transferred to another distant particle without moving two particles at all. This is called quantum state teleportation. There are many following theoretical and experimental papers published. Researchers believe that quantum teleportation is the foundation of quantum calculation and quantum communication. In 2008, M. Hoda proposed that it may be possible to teleport energy by exploiting quantum energy fluctuations of an entangled, you said, entangled vacuum state of a quantum field. In 2023, zero temperature quantum energy transportation was observed and recorded by Kazuki Ikeda for the first time across microscopic distances using IBM superconducting computers that are used by quantum computing. What? So it's already been done, as being tested.
Well, it has, but on this small level. I'm just saying that when you cross into these, let's call them these forbidden sciences, that are been highly classified. I mean, you know, and they were standing on the shoulders of great people. Nikola Tesla discovered many of this phenomenon. There were others. I mentioned the Biefeld-Brown effect with electrogravitic, so what's called electromagnetic gravitic, where certain voltages cause objects to float and change their structure. And I think it has more to do with the magnetic spin. I'm not a physicist, but from what I've studied and learned from people who worked on it, that is what it's really doing. And it causes a magnetic field flux that alters the mass, the actual, not weight, but mass of an object. And then it can float and go up, you know, put against gravity. And that's how you control. If you look at how these objects move, often they've been, like we had one case when I was in France, and we were doing what we call CE5 contact, which is when we attempt to make contact with these objects and these civilizations. And the object was moving over us at 200,000 kilometers per hour. It was tracked by the French Ministry of Defense. And an admiral was there. We were doing a demonstration for them. And it could make a right-hand turn or stop. Now, if you were in a normal vehicle, if you were a pilot in a normal object, your brains would come out of your nose. The G-forces would kill you immediately. So we know that they're able to do that and also control for 1G. In other words, so you're really in an electromagnetic space-time bubble when you're moving like that. And that technology, as I mentioned, began to be experimented with in the 20s and 30s. But by the time the 40s came along and they started in earnest studying the extraterrestrial vehicles, it took a while. And also, it's not just energy and propulsion, it's specialized materials. I have the CEO of a corporation that was working on the skin of one of these, part of the craft. And it was such an unusual crystalline metallic material. And they spent many years and figured out how to fabricate it. So some of the really specialized materials we have that we use have been sort of 2 or 3 steps removed, spun off from reverse engineering, studying extraterrestrial, not just energy and propulsion, but material science. So the material sciences are really interesting. And then the final one, that's the big one, is communication. Because the communication is, well, Elon Musk would love this with Neuralink, but it's non-local. So their communication systems involve the ability to interface with very well-designed electromagnetic systems that interface with the consciousness field and thought. So in other words, you want to do something to your computer, you just think to it without a wire, without an implant.
I can see that.
But think of it. I mean, a thought. What is thought? We have these thoughts, and it's like, hey, what dreams may come. But many people have had these sort of experiences where they've had an out of body or near death. In my case, I met my wife in a series of lucid dreams. I think it's because I'm part Cherokee.
Same here.
Yep, I met her that way.
I met her too at 18 years old.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have our 45th anniversary in a couple months. So what's interesting is that think about a civilization so advanced that aspect of thought and consciousness, without wiring, without something at the speed of electromagnetic, can interface with a device. So in 1991, I wrote a paper, and it was about this, and it was called Consciousness-Assisted Technologies, but it goes the other way, where a technology can assist your own consciousness. So you hear about the CIA remote viewing programs, like Ingo Swann, who was a friend of mine I knew, where they were able to use consciousness to spy on the Soviet Union or what have you, so-called psychic abilities. I mean, it's sort of a loaded term because it's so usually wacky, but that is real. And imagine a civilization so advanced that innate ability is augmented, assisted with technological systems. And the reverse, that their technological systems can interface directly. So when you hear many accounts of these ETs, you'll see they'll touch a console and think to it, and the craft moves and goes. So this is not Alexander Graham Bell using the speed of light electromagnetic.
I think sometimes, you're thinking about somebody, and then boom, 3 seconds later, you get that phone call.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And that's happened, I don't know how many times,
sure,
where it happens. Well, how did this happen?
Right.
What gave you the signal that was coming? What gave you a signal that was taking place? I couldn't pinpoint on what that is.
Oh, I do.
But what is that?
What it is.
Yeah.
Okay, this is why this is beautiful. This gets back into conscious quantum entanglement. So the ultimate non-local entangled field is the conscious mind itself. Ernst Schrödinger, who was one of the fathers of quantum mechanics and particle wave theory in 1908, he said the total number of minds in the universe is one, and that is a singularity. So the real singularity they're looking for is actually the consciousness field. So you and I are speaking right now, mm-hmm. and you have your individual self and ego and personality, and I have mine, mm-hmm. but we're both awake. And that awake field is a singularity. But we end up closing it off. So if you open, this is what meditation does. Meditation enables you to connect to that deep or transcendent aspect of consciousness that's actually omnipresent. It's everywhere. It's not limited by space and time, which is why people can have experiences of a lucid dream and see something in the future, or an intuition. And I, as a medical doctor, I'm not practicing now, and the nurses knew I used to be able to do this. I would sense if someone had an occult or hidden cancer, and I would just enigmatically order a CAT scan when it didn't seem to be indicated, and it would be in there because I could sense it, see it. So that's something we ought to teach all doctors, by the way, but someday we will. But this is an area that gets into a really controversial part of the work we do, and that is going beyond just sort of the material entanglement to how are these civilizations communicating? Well, it can't be like our cell phone at the speed of light. And it's got to be something that is instantaneous. Well, it turns out through the consciousness field and thought, you actually can connect, bang, instantly across 1 million light years of space, which is really amazing to think about.
Yes, it's a way mind, thoughts, mm-hmm. teleport. I don't know if you want to use that word. Mm-hmm. Could physical things teleport? Could you?
Yes.
At one point, one would say, how am I going to be able to email you to go from here to Australia within half a second? How does that happen, right? Mm-hmm. What causes that to happen, right? Some of this stuff is way too advanced for the average person to be thinking about. This is why, specific topics like this, we're having this conversation with you.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.